The doctor's hands were shaking, not trembling like she was cold, shaking like she was holding a live grenade. She was staring at my file, not at the ultrasound screen where my baby's heartbeat was supposed to be flickering in black and white. No, she was staring at the paperwork, at my husband's name printed in neat, innocent letters at the top of the page. Grant Mercer, father of the baby, my loving, devoted husband. Then she did something I'll never forget. She reached over and turned off the monitor. Just switched it off, mid-exam, like someone had pulled the plug on my entire life. The room went dead silent except for my breathing, which was getting faster and shallower by the second. "Mrs. Mercer," she whispered, voice barely audible. "I need to speak with you privately right now." She didn't wait for me to answer. She practically dragged me off that exam table, still half covered in cold gel, shirt pulled up, completely vulnerable, and walked me down the hallway to her office. People in the waiting room stared as we rushed past. She closed the door, locked it. I heard the deadbolt click and my heart just stopped. I thought my baby was dying. Every worst-case scenario flooded my mind in 3 seconds flat. Then she said words that made my world implode. "You need to leave your husband. Today, before you go home, get a divorce lawyer first." I laughed, actually laughed out loud, like a crazy person. "What? Why? We're having a baby together. We're happy. I don't understand." She opened a folder with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "Mrs. Mercer, Daphne, what I'm about to show you will destroy everything you think you know about your marriage." She looked me dead in the eyes. "But you need to see it before you go home, before he knows that you know. Because if he finds out you know the truth..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. And right there, 4 months pregnant, sitting in a locked doctor's office with ultrasound gel still cold on my belly, I learned that the man sleeping next to me every night had spent $50,000 trying to frame me for adultery. He'd bribed doctors, paid off nurses, switched sperm samples, orchestrated an entire conspiracy involving multiple people and falsified medical records. Planned my destruction down to the last detail, the last document, the last lie he'd tell when he discovered I'd cheated on him. All so he could steal my dead grandmother's money. All so he could destroy me and walk away with everything. But here's the thing he didn't know. The thing Grant Mercer never bothered to find out about the woman he married. I don't break. I don't crumble. I don't give up. I plan. And I plan better than he ever could. Before I tell you what was in that folder, because trust me, it's worse than anything you're imagining, I need you to do 3 things. 1. Hit that subscribe button right now. This story gets absolutely insane, and if you're not subscribed, YouTube might not show you the ending. 2. Smash that like button if you're ready to watch a con artist get absolutely destroyed by the woman he thought was an easy target. 3. Drop a comment right now telling me, have you ever had your gut tell you something was wrong but you ignored it? Because same. And I learned my lesson the hardest way possible. Okay, now let me take you back to the beginning, way back. Before the betrayal. Before the lies. Before everything fell apart. Because you need to understand how a successful marketing director with a trust fund and a good head on her shoulders ended up married to a man who was literally plotting her destruction while kissing her goodnight. You need to understand the warning signs I missed. The red flags I ignored. The moments when I should have run but didn't. Because maybe, just maybe, my story will help you avoid making the same mistakes I did. My name is Daphne Wilson. I'm 32 years old. I work as a marketing director at a boutique firm in Connecticut. Good job, good salary. The kind of career I actually worked for, not something that was handed to me. And yeah, I come from money. I'm not gonna pretend I don't. My family has what people politely call old money. The kind that's been around so long it's just normal, expected. Part of the family history like the china patterns and the silver tea service. My great-great-great-grandmother built our family home in 1887. This massive, beautiful Victorian estate with gardens that go on for acres and rooms, I literally didn't explore until I was a teenager because there were just so many of them. 5 generations of Wilson women have lived in that house, loved in that house, raised their babies in that house, got married in that garden, celebrated birthdays and holidays and all the big moments of life in those rooms. It's not just a house. It's a legacy, a history, a testament to every strong woman who came before me. When my grandmother Alina passed away 5 years ago, she left me everything. The house, the trust fund she'd carefully managed for decades. About $2.3 million total. Not enough to buy a yacht and retire to Monaco, but enough to never worry about rent or student loans or whether I could afford to fix my car when it broke down. Enough to feel secure. And that's what my grandmother wanted for me. Security, independence, the freedom to make choices based on what I wanted, not what I could afford. Her will was very specific. This money is for Daphne alone, to be used as she sees fit, to provide her with the independence and security every woman deserves. She knew what she was doing when she wrote that. She'd lived through enough to know that a woman needs her own resources, her own safety net, her own power. I never flaunted it. Never walked around with designer bags covered in logos or wore jewelry that screamed, "I'm wealthy, look at me." That's not who I am. That's not how I was raised. I worked my butt off in my career, got my marketing degree, started at the bottom, worked my way up to director through actual skill and effort and late nights at the office. I drove a 10-year-old Subaru that had more duct tape than original paint at that point. The passenger side mirror was literally held on with duct tape and prayer. My coworkers used to make fun of me for it. "Daphne, you could buy a Tesla with cash. Why are you driving a car that looks like it survived an apocalypse?" Because the Subaru still worked. And I'm practical. Sue me. I bought my coffee at the same bodega every single morning. This little place 3 blocks from my apartment where Louis, the owner, knew my order by heart. "Large latte, extra shot, oat milk, no sugar," he'd say before I even reached the counter. "Morning, Miss Daphne." That was my life, normal, grounded, real. The inheritance was my safety net, not my personality, not my identity, just there, in the background, providing security. But apparently that safety net made me a target. I just didn't know it yet. Didn't know that someone could look at me and see dollar signs instead of a person. Didn't know that my grandmother's hard-earned legacy would make me pray for someone who saw relationships as transactions and love as a long con. I met Grant Mercer 4 years ago. 4 years. Feels like a lifetime now, but also like yesterday. Isn't that weird how trauma does that to time? It was at my family's annual charity gala. The Wilsons had been hosting this event for like 60 years. Started by my great-grandmother as a fundraiser for the local children's hospital, and it had grown into this huge thing. Super fancy. Black tie, the whole 9 yards. Everyone who was anyone in Connecticut society showed up. Old money, new money, people who wanted to be around money, they all came. That particular year, God, I remember this so clearly, I was standing at the bar trying to escape from this absolute tool of a human being. This guy in a suit that probably cost more than my car, which, granted, wasn't saying much given the state of my Subaru, who'd asked about my financial situation within literally 3 minutes of saying hello. 3 minutes. We'd exchanged names and he'd complimented my dress and then, "So, Daphne Wilson, any relation to the Wilson family that owns this estate?" "Yes, actually. Alina was my grandmother." His eyes literally lit up, like I could see the dollar signs appearing in his pupils. "Oh, how wonderful. And I understand she left quite the legacy. Are you involved in managing the estate?" "Like, sir, we just met. You don't even know my favorite color, my job, whether I have siblings, anything about me as an actual human being. And you're asking about my inheritance? Read the room." I was about to make some excuse and walk away. I'd gotten very good at extracting myself from conversations with obvious gold diggers when Grant appeared. Tall, maybe 6'1", dark hair that was just perfectly styled without looking like he'd tried too hard. This easy, charming smile that didn't feel rehearsed or fake. Wearing a well-fitted suit that looked expensive but not showy. He just appeared at my elbow like he'd been sent by the universe to rescue me. "Excuse me," he said to the gold digger with this apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I believe they're about to start the silent auction, and Daphne promised to show me the items." I had promised no such thing, obviously, since I'd never met this man before in my life. But I grabbed onto that lifeline like a drowning person. "Oh, right. The auction, I completely forgot. Sorry, we have to go. And I let this complete stranger guide me away from Mr. Financial's situation. Once we were out of earshot, Grant turned to me and smiled. You looked like you needed an exit strategy. I laughed, actually laughed. The relief was that strong. Was it that obvious? Only to someone who was watching, which I was. Hope that doesn't sound creepy. After the alternative, you're a knight in shining armor. He offered to buy me a drink. Well, the bar was open, so technically he was offering to stand in line for me, but the gesture counted. We talked for an hour, a full hour, and not once, did he ask about my money, my family's wealth, my inheritance, any of it. He asked what I did for work, seemed genuinely interested when I talked about marketing campaigns I'd managed. He asked about my favorite books. We bonded over both loving Kurt Vonnegut. He asked if I'd traveled much, told me about a trip he'd taken to Ireland that made me want to book a flight immediately. About me as a person, not as a bank account. He said he was a financial advisor, worked for a mid-sized firm in the city. Nothing fancy, but he enjoyed it. Liked helping people plan for their futures. He'd gotten a last-minute invitation to the gala from a colleague who couldn't attend. Honestly, I had no idea who the Wilson family even was before tonight, he said with this self-deprecating smile. I just knew it was for a good cause and there'd be decent food. Looking back, that should have been red flag number 1. A financial advisor who didn't research the host family of a major charity event. That's like a chef showing up to a cooking competition like, oh, we're making food today. Had no idea, didn't prepare at all. Come on. But I was so tired of obvious gold diggers. So exhausted from guys who looked at me and saw my grandmother's trust fund instead of a human being. And here was this charming, seemingly genuine dude asking about my favorite books instead of my bank account. So I fell for it, fell hard. We dated for a year. And Grant was perfect. I mean, looking back with what I know now, he was too perfect. But at the time, I just thought I'd finally found someone real. He was attentive without being clingy, thoughtful without being over the top, remembered the smallest details about things I'd mentioned in passing. Like I mentioned once, that I loved this specific type of chocolate that you could only get from this one shop in the city. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my apartment with a box of it. I was in the neighborhood, he said, like he just happened to be near a shop 40 minutes from where he lived and worked. He insisted on paying for dinners even though I'd told him repeatedly that I could afford it. I know you can, he'd say with that charming smile. But I want to, let me do this. It felt respectful, like he was treating me like an equal, not like someone he needed to impress or someone he was trying to use. He seemed so real, so different from every other guy I'd dated. My mother, Vivian, saw through him immediately. Like, immediately. After their first meeting, we'd had dinner at her place. Nothing fancy, just the 3 of us and some pasta. She pulled me aside while Grant was in the bathroom. She grabbed my arm, tight enough that I knew she was serious. Daphne, she said, and her voice had this tone I'd never heard before. This combination of fear and certainty. That man's smile doesn't reach his eyes. What? Look at him when he smiles, really look. His mouth moves, but his eyes stay cold, dead, like he's performing instead of feeling. I pulled my arm away. Mom, you're being ridiculous. You just met him. Something's wrong with him, I can feel it. Mother's intuition, woman's intuition, whatever you want to call it. Something about him is off. You're being paranoid. Daphne, please, I'm begging you, be careful with this man. There's something he's not telling you, something he's hiding. We fought about Grant constantly after that. Every family dinner turned into an argument about him. Every phone call ended with one of us hanging up on the other. Every text conversation devolved into accusations and defenses. You don't even know him, Mom. I know enough, Daphne. I know what I saw. You're just jealous that I'm happy. That one hurt her. I could see it in her face when I said it. But I was too defensive, too committed to Grant, too desperate to believe I'd found something real. You're being overprotective. You can't stand that I have my own life. That's not true and you know it. Then why can't you just be happy for me? Eventually, we just stopped talking, stopped calling, stopped texting except for obligatory birthday messages. Happy birthday, Mom. Thank you, sweetheart. Hope you're well. That was it. That was the extent of our relationship for 2 years. 2 years of near total silence between me and the woman who raised me. The woman who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my homework and held me when my first boyfriend broke my heart. All because I chose to believe a con artist over my own mother. God, the regret I feel about that. The guilt. Knowing that she was right about everything, and I pushed her away for it. Called her paranoid and jealous and overprotective when she was just trying to save me from exactly what ended up happening. Spoiler alert, Mom was right. About everything. About Grant's fake smile and his hidden motives, and the fact that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong with him. And at this point in the story, after everything that happened, she's absolutely earned the biggest, most satisfying "I told you so" in human history. And you know what? She never said it. Not once. But we'll get to that later. Grant and I got married after dating for a year. Looking back, that was fast. Too fast. But at the time, it felt right. Beautiful ceremony at my grandmother's estate. The same gardens where 5 generations of Wilson women had gotten married. 200 guests. String quartet playing Pachelbel's canon as I walked down the aisle. Flowers everywhere, roses and peonies and hydrangeas, my grandmother's favorites. It was perfect. A fairy tale. And Grant cried during his vows. I remember this so clearly because everyone commented on it later. Your husband was so emotional. The way he cried when he saw you in your dress, that's real love. You can tell he adores you. He stood there at the altar, holding my hands, tears streaming down his face as he promised to love and protect me forever, to cherish me in sickness and in health, to stand by me through whatever challenges life brought, to build a future together based on trust and honesty and mutual respect. Looking back, those were probably the most honest tears he ever shed. Not from joy, not from love, not from the overwhelming emotion of committing to someone he cared about. From relief. The con was working. The Mark was walking down the aisle willingly. The long game was paying off. He'd successfully infiltrated my life, gained my trust, secured legal marriage status. He was in. And now it was just a matter of time until he could execute the final phase and walk away with everything. Marriage was good at first, or at least it seemed good. Normal, you know. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper and drinking coffee. Grant would make breakfast. He actually was a pretty good cook, I'll give him that. Made these amazing blueberry pancakes. We'd talk about our weeks, our plans, stupid stuff that didn't matter but felt important because we were sharing it. It felt real. It felt like we were building something. After 2 years of marriage, we started trying for a baby. It seemed like the natural next step, you know? We were stable. Happy, or so I thought, financially secure. We had the space, that giant house with all those empty bedrooms just waiting for kids. So we tried, and tried, and tried. 6 months passed, then 12, then 18. Nothing. Month after month, negative pregnancy tests. Month after month, that little window of hope followed by crushing disappointment. Finally, after 18 months, we saw a fertility specialist, Dr. Richard Patterson. This kind older man who'd been practicing reproductive medicine for 30 years. He ran all the tests, and the diagnosis hit like a freight train to the chest. Grant had severe male factor infertility. His sperm count was almost non-existent, like barely measurable. And what little he had was sluggish, which is the medical term for sperm that barely move. The doctor literally used the word sluggish, which is not what any man wants to hear about his swimmers. Natural conception was basically impossible. The chances were like winning the lottery while being struck by lightning while finding a 4-leaf clover. On a Tuesday, during a full moon. Not happening. Grant seemed devastated. Absolutely devastated. He cried in the car for 20 minutes after that appointment. Just sat there in the parking lot of the medical center, hands on the steering wheel, tears streaming down his face. Apologizing over and over like it was some personal failure, some character flaw. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying, voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I can't give you this. I know how much you want to be a mother. I'm so sorry I'm broken. I'm so sorry." I held him, rubbed his back, told him we'd figure it out together. Told him it wasn't his fault. These things happen, medical issues happen, it doesn't make him less of a man. Told him that wanting to be parents was about more than biology. We had options: IVF, adoption, donor sperm if he was open to it. We'll figure this out, I promised. That's what marriage is about, right? Supporting each other through the hard stuff? He nodded against my shoulder. I love you so much, he said. I don't deserve you. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have possibly known, was that Grant wasn't crying from grief. He wasn't mourning the children we might not have naturally. He wasn't feeling devastated about his diagnosis. He was crying because his plan had just gotten significantly more complicated. All that emotion, that wasn't sadness. That was him recalculating, adjusting his strategy, figuring out how to turn this obstacle into an opportunity. Because that's what narcissists do, what con artists do. They don't feel emotions the way normal people do. They perform them. We decided to do IVF. Specifically, a procedure called ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where doctors use a microscope and these incredibly tiny tools to inject a single sperm directly into an egg. It's like the most high-tech, science fiction approach to making a baby. Our best shot at having a biological child given Grant's diagnosis. And here's where things get interesting. Here's where the con really started taking shape. Grant insisted on researching clinics himself, said he wanted to find the perfect place, the best doctors, the highest success rates. You're stressed enough, he said. Let me handle this. I'll find us the best clinic in the state. He handled all the paperwork, set up all the appointments, managed all the logistics, coordinated with the doctors and the financial department and the scheduling team. At the time, I thought he was being supportive, stepping up, taking control of something because I was so emotionally drained from the infertility diagnosis and the failed months of trying. I thought it was sweet, thoughtful, exactly what a good husband should do. Turns out he was shopping, not for the best clinic with the highest success rates, not for the most experienced doctors or the most cutting-edge technology. He was shopping for the most corrupt one, for doctors and nurses who could be bought, for people willing to commit fraud for the right price, for staff who valued money more than ethics. And he found them. Oh, did he find them? Our first IVF cycle failed. Devastating. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days, cried until I had nothing left. Grant held me, whispered encouragement, promised we'd try again. The second cycle 7 months ago worked. 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Positive. I was going to be a mother. Grant held me while I cried happy tears. Started talking about nursery colors and baby names and the future he'd always dreamed of. Then, super casually, he mentioned something. You should probably update your will now that we're starting a family. At the time, I thought it was sweet, practical, the kind of thing a responsible husband thinks about. I had no idea he was already counting my grandmother's money as his own. Had no idea that in just a few months, a stranger would show me documents proving my husband had orchestrated the entire thing. Had no idea the baby growing inside me was part of an elaborate con designed to destroy my life. 4 months pregnant, and something shifted in my marriage. It wasn't one big, obvious thing. It was 1,000 tiny things that added up to a picture I didn't want to see. The kind of things you notice but explain away because the alternative, that your husband is hiding something, that your marriage isn't what you thought, is too painful to consider. Grant started keeping his phone face down on every surface. Kitchen counter, face down. Nightstand, face down. Coffee table while we watched TV, face down. Bathroom sink while he brushed his teeth, face down. And he changed his password to something I didn't know. Now we'd always known each other's phone passwords. It wasn't like a trust issue or anything. It was just convenient. Hey, can you check my phone? I'm driving and I think I heard a text. Can you order us food? My phone's dead and yours is closer. Normal couple stuff. But suddenly, new password. No explanation. Just changed one day and he didn't tell me what it was. When I asked about it, casually, not accusatory, just curious, he had an answer ready. Client confidentiality, he said without even looking up from whatever he was doing. New company policy, we have to change our passwords to something that's not shared with anyone. Security protocol. Which, okay. Fair enough, right? Except financial advisors had always had client confidentiality requirements. That had been part of his job for the entire time I'd known him. So what changed? Why was the password suddenly an issue now? But I didn't push it. Didn't want to be that wife. The suspicious, paranoid, controlling wife. So I let it go. The phone calls started getting weird too. We'd be sitting right next to each other on the couch, watching a movie or just relaxing, and his phone would ring. He'd glance at the screen, and I could never see who was calling because, face down phone and suddenly need to take it outside. Outside. Work stuff, he'd say, already heading for the door. Boring client portfolio things. You'd hate it, I'll just be a minute. He'd be gone for 20 minutes, sometimes 30. Having these supposedly boring, work-related conversations at 11 o'clock at night, on a Saturday. Now, I'm no expert in the financial industry, but I'm pretty sure the stock market takes weekends off. Unless Grant had secret clients in Tokyo who needed urgent portfolio advice at midnight Eastern Time, which he definitely, absolutely did not. Something else was going on. The late nights at the office multiplied. Used to be once a week, maybe twice. That's normal for someone with a demanding job. Now it was 3 times a week, 4 times, sometimes 5. He wouldn't come home until midnight, sometimes even later. Big project, he'd say. Restructuring a major client's entire portfolio. It's taking forever, but the commission will be worth it. He's a financial advisor, not an emergency room surgeon. Not a lawyer working on a trial. Not someone whose job typically requires that kind of insane schedule. What could possibly need him at the office until midnight 5 nights a week? I found receipts. Not even hidden receipts. Just left in his pants pockets when he asked me to take his suits to the dry cleaner. One from a restaurant downtown I'd never been to. A place I'd actually mentioned wanting to try, and Grant had said it was overpriced and overhyped. $280 for dinner for 2. 2 appetizers, 2 entrees, 2 desserts, a bottle of wine that cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. Another receipt from a hotel in the city, 40 minutes from our house. The Marriott downtown, $380 for one night. Why would my husband need a hotel room 40 minutes from our house? Why would he spend $380 on a hotel when he could just drive home? Why was he having $280 dinners at restaurants he told me weren't worth visiting? When I asked about the restaurant, casually, just mentioning I'd seen the receipt, he had an answer ready. Oh, client dinner. This guy I'm trying to land for the firm, took him somewhere nice to impress him. Worked, too, he signed with us the next day. Smooth, practiced, came out just a little too quickly. When I asked about the hotel, more carefully this time, because I could feel my heart starting to race with suspicion, he had an answer for that, too. Conference that ran late, like really late. They had breakout sessions until almost midnight, and I had to be back at 8 the next morning. Made more sense to just get a room than drive home exhausted and risk falling asleep at the wheel. He turned it around on me. Safety first, babe. I know the hotel seems expensive, but it's cheaper than a car accident, right? Made me feel guilty for even asking. When I pushed harder, when I said something in my gut felt off, when I mentioned that things had changed and I was worried. His tone changed, completely. Daphne, you're being paranoid. It's the hormones. Pregnancy does this to women, makes them irrational. My mother warned me about this. Women get anxious when they're expecting. Start imagining problems that don't exist. Don't turn into one of those wives. You know, the kind who don't trust their husbands, who question everything, who make their marriages miserable. And you know what I did? I apologized. I apologized for questioning him, for having instincts, for noticing that my husband was acting shady as hell. You're right, I'm sorry. It's probably just the pregnancy making me anxious. That's how good he was at manipulation, how skilled at gaslighting. He made me feel crazy for seeing what was right in front of my face. Made me doubt my own perceptions, my own reality, my own gut instinct that had never steered me wrong before. Then the financial pressure started. Grant had always been a little weird about wanting access to my trust fund, but now it became this constant, escalating pressure. "We should add me to your trust," he said one night over dinner. Casual, like he was suggesting we try a new restaurant. What? Why? Well, what if something happens during delivery? Women die in childbirth, Daphne. It's rare, but it happens. If you die and I'm not on the trust, I won't be able to access funds to take care of our baby. The estate would be tied up in probate for months, maybe years. He was using my potential death as a reason to get access to my money. We should set up power of attorney too, he continued. Just to be safe. Let me manage things while you're recovering from birth. You're going to be exhausted, sleep-deprived, dealing with a newborn. The last thing you'll want to worry about is finances. Power of attorney is just common sense, honey. Every married couple does it, unless, he paused, let that word hang there. Unless what? Unless you don't trust me. There it was. The accusation disguised as a question. The way of making me feel like I was the problem if I didn't immediately agree. Then he started on the house. Your grandmother's estate is beautiful, but it's way too big for us. Way too much upkeep. Way too expensive to maintain. We should sell it. Invest the money properly. I know exactly which funds would maximize our returns. We could buy something smaller, more manageable, and have a huge nest egg left over. This man wanted me to sell my great-great-great-grandmother's house. The house where 5 generations of Wilson women had lived, loved, raised their children, built their lives. The house that held 130 years of family history, of memories, of legacy. Sell it. And let him invest the proceeds. The same man who insisted we needed 3 different streaming services because he couldn't remember which one had his shows. The same man who'd once tried to write off a jet ski as a business expense on his taxes. The same man who couldn't remember to pay the electric bill on time without multiple reminders. That's who should control $2 million in investment funds. Absolutely not. Hard pass. Not happening. Every time I said no, gently, carefully, trying not to start a fight, Grant's warmth just evaporated, like someone had flipped a switch. He became cold, distant, almost cruel, started sleeping on the far edge of the bed. We went from cuddling every night, from falling asleep wrapped around each other, to having a literal pillow wall between us. You move too much, he said when I asked why he was suddenly sleeping so far away. The pregnancy makes you restless. I need my sleep. The arguments became more frequent. He'd bring up the trust. I'd refuse. He'd give me the silent treatment for days. Walk past me in our own house like I was furniture. Answer my questions with one-word responses. Act like I'd committed some terrible offense by not immediately handing over control of my inheritance. His silent treatments were something else. Cold, calculated, designed to punish. He'd go days without really speaking to me, without making eye contact, without acknowledging my presence beyond what was absolutely necessary. But you know what was funny? Those silent treatments lasted exactly until he got hungry. Funny how that worked. Apparently his principles had a time limit, and that limit was an empty stomach. What's for dinner? First words he'd speak to me in 3 days. Not an apology, not a conversation about why he was upset. Just what's for dinner? He barely touched me anymore. No more casual affection. No more hand-holding or quick kisses or hugs just because. Definitely no sex. He blamed my changing body. I don't want to hurt the baby, he said when I tried to initiate one night, pushing me away gently but firmly. The doctor said it's perfectly safe. I know what the doctor said, but I'd feel terrible if something happened. Let's just wait until after the birth, okay? Which sounds caring on the surface, right? Protective, considerate, but it felt like rejection in my bones. Felt like he couldn't stand to touch me, couldn't stand to look at me, like my pregnant body disgusted him. I tried to talk to him about it. Tried to have a real conversation about how distant he'd become, how our marriage felt like it was crumbling, how scared I was that we were falling apart right before our baby arrived. He said I was being needy, hormonal, difficult. This is temporary, Daphne. Pregnancy is hard. New babies are hard. Once things settle down, we'll be fine. But I feel like you're pulling away from me. I'm not pulling away. I'm trying to give you space. Trying not to add stress when you're already dealing with the pregnancy. He made it sound reasonable. Made it sound like I was the one creating problems by wanting my husband to act like he loved me. I started wondering if the problem really was me. If pregnancy hormones were making me paranoid and needy and irrational like he kept saying. If I was imagining the distance, the coldness, the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. Maybe this was normal. Maybe all marriages went through rough patches. Maybe I was expecting too much, demanding too much, being too sensitive. Maybe. I doubted myself constantly, second-guessed every instinct, talked myself out of my own reality. One night, I woke up at 2 in the morning, just suddenly wide awake, the way you sometimes are during pregnancy. Grant wasn't in bed. I could see the bathroom light was off, so he wasn't in there. I got up carefully because I was 4 months pregnant and my center of gravity was already shifting, and went looking for him. Found him in the kitchen, hunched over his phone at the kitchen table, speaking in this hushed, urgent voice I'd never heard before. I stood in the hallway, hidden in shadow, and listened. "It's almost time," he was saying. "Just a few more months." Listening to whoever was on the other end. "By spring, everything will be settled. All the pieces will be in place. I just need to wait until after the birth. Then we execute." Execute, that was the word he used. Not proceed, or move forward, or any other normal business term. Execute, she doesn't suspect anything. She's too focused on the baby to pay attention. He saw me, turned around and saw me standing there in my pajamas, pregnant, belly obvious even in the darkness. Hung up immediately. Didn't even say goodbye to whoever he was talking to. Just ended the call and slipped his phone into his pocket. "Daphne, you scared me. What are you doing up?" I heard voices. "Who were you talking to?" "Work emergency," he said without missing a beat. "Client in California, time zone difference. Needed urgent advice about some stock options expiring tomorrow." Stock options that expire get handled during business hours by the client's broker, not at 2 a.m. via personal phone call. But I was too tired to argue, too pregnant, too desperate to believe that everything was fine. "Go back to sleep, honey," he said, wrapping an arm around my shoulders, guiding me back toward the bedroom like I was a child who'd wandered out of bed. "Everything's fine, just boring work stuff." I didn't ask what needed to be settled by spring. Didn't ask what needed to be executed. Didn't ask why his wife was someone who doesn't suspect anything, rather than someone he could be honest with. I just went back to bed. Let him convince me it was nothing. Let him gaslight me one more time. My best friend Tara came over for lunch the next week. We'd been friends since college. She knew me better than anyone except maybe my mother. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, watching me make excuse after excuse for Grant. "He's just stressed about becoming a father. His work has been really demanding lately. We're both adjusting to the pregnancy. It's a big change. Marriage goes through rough patches. This is normal." Finally, she put down her fork and gave me this look. This look that said she'd heard enough bullshit to last a lifetime. "Daph, listen to yourself right now." "What?" "You sound like a domestic violence victim making excuses for her abuser. I'm not saying Grant hits you. I know he doesn't. But the pattern is the same. Something's wrong, you feel it, but you keep explaining it away. Tara, when's the last time you talked to your mom?" The question hit me like a punch. What does my mom have to do with? "When, Daphne?" I didn't answer, couldn't answer. Because the truth was I hadn't really talked to my mother in almost 2 years. Not since I'd chosen Grant over her warnings. "When's the last time Grant was actually happy to see you?" Tara continued. "Not performing for other people at parties or events. Not putting on a show when someone's watching. Really, genuinely happy that you walked through the door." I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out, because I couldn't remember. Couldn't remember the last time Grant's face lit up when I came home. Couldn't remember the last time he seemed excited to see me, to talk to me, to spend time with me. "Trust your gut," Tara said, reaching across the table to grab my hand. "Something is wrong here, I don't know what, but I can see it and I know you can feel it. Please, Daph, please be careful. Please pay attention. You're being dramatic. Am I? Am I really? Or am I the only person in your life willing to tell you the truth?" I told her she was overreacting. Told her pregnancy was stressful for both of us and things would get better. Told her she didn't understand because she wasn't married, didn't have kids, didn't know what it was like. I was defensive, dismissive, kind of cruel, actually. She left not long after, hugged me at the door and said, "I love you, I'm here when you need me, and you will need me." I didn't call her for 3 weeks after that, too embarrassed, too proud, too deep in denial. But that night I couldn't sleep. Lay awake until almost dawn, thinking about everything Tara had said. Thinking about Grant's phone always face down, password changed, secret calls at 2 a.m. His late nights with explanations that didn't quite make sense. His sudden, intense obsession with accessing my money. The way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention, like I was a problem to solve, not a person to love. The coldness, the distance, the silent treatments, the rejection, all the tiny red flags I'd been ignoring, explaining away, pretending weren't there. 4 months pregnant, regular OB appointment for a routine ultrasound. Just a standard checkup, nothing special. Something I'd done multiple times already without incident. My usual doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen, who I loved, was on vacation. So I got scheduled with someone I'd never met before, Dr. Claire Brennan. I went alone. Grant had a client meeting he absolutely couldn't miss. Another client meeting during business hours that somehow couldn't be rescheduled for a husband to attend his wife's prenatal appointment. But I didn't fight it, didn't want to be needy or demanding, so I went alone. Standard appointment. Nothing special. I checked in at the front desk, filled out the same forms I'd filled out a dozen times before, waited in the same waiting room reading the same outdated magazines. Got called back by the nurse, changed into the same uncomfortable gown, laid back on the same exam table. Dr. Brennan came in, pleasant, professional, warm smile, made small talk while setting up the ultrasound equipment, asked how I was feeling, if the baby was moving much, if I had any concerns. All the normal questions. Then she opened my file, glanced at the paperwork, at the intake forms, at my husband's name in the father section, Grant Mercer, and her face changed. It was subtle at first, a flicker of something in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or shock. She looked at the name, looked at me, back at the name. Her hand, holding the ultrasound wand, started to tremble. Just slightly at first, then more noticeably. Dr. Brennan, what's wrong? Is the baby okay? Did you see something? The baby is fine, she said quickly. Perfectly healthy, that's not. She stood up, walked to the door, looked out into the hallway to make sure no one was nearby. Then she closed the door and locked it. I heard the deadbolt click into place and my heart just stopped. Mrs. Mercer, she said, turning to face me. Daphne, I need to speak with you privately. Right now, this cannot wait another second. I know what your husband did. She walked to her desk, pulled open a drawer, removed a folder. And I have proof. We need to pause for 1 second before I tell you what was in that folder. Hit that like button right now if this story has you absolutely hooked. And comment, what do you think Grant did? What's your theory? Because I absolutely guarantee that what I'm about to tell you is worse than anything you're imagining. So much worse. Ready? Let's do this. Dr. Claire Brennan pulled a folder from her desk drawer, a thick folder, stuffed with papers. Her hands were still shaking as she opened it. Actually shaking, I could see the papers trembling. Mrs. Mercer, Daphne, before I show you this, I need you to understand something. She sat down across from me, looked me directly in the eyes. My younger sister works at your fertility clinic, Reproductive Specialists of Connecticut. She's a nurse there. I just stared at her. Not understanding yet, not connecting the dots. My brain was still stuck on, is my baby okay, even though she'd said the baby was fine. 3 weeks ago, Dr. Brennan continued, my sister showed up at my apartment close to midnight. She was sobbing, hysterical, could barely speak. She took a deep breath. She told me something that's been eating her alive for months. And when I saw your husband's name on your file just now, Grant Mercer, I recognized it immediately from what she told me. She laid the folder open on her desk, spread out documents, printouts, what looked like medical records, and everything I thought I knew about my marriage turned to ashes right in front of my eyes. My sister's name is Molly, Dr. Brennan said. Molly Brennan. She's worked at Reproductive Specialists for 4 years. Good nurse, caring, dedicated, never had any issues. She pointed to a document. 7 months ago, almost exactly 7 months, a patient's husband approached her at the clinic. She was at the nurse's station, updating charts. He walked up like he'd been waiting for a quiet moment. Dr. Brennan's voice was steady, but I could hear the anger underneath. He was charming, Well-dressed, had this easy smile, seemed desperate but reasonable if that makes sense, like someone with a genuine problem who needed help. He told her he had a special situation that required discretion. Said his wife, you didn't know about it, but that he was planning to use donor sperm for the IVF cycle instead of his own. What? He told Molly there was a family genetic issue, something serious, a condition that ran in his family that he didn't want to risk passing to a child. He said he couldn't tell you, his wife, because you'd insist on using his sperm anyway. You'd want to take the risk, but he couldn't let that happen, couldn't risk having a sick child. Dr. Brennan's voice was bitter now. He made it sound noble, like he was protecting you, protecting the future baby, making a hard choice out of love. He said he just needed help keeping it quiet, making sure the switch happened smoothly, making sure you never knew. He said it was for the best, that you'd be happier not knowing, that the baby would be healthier, that everyone would win. She pulled out another document, and then he offered to pay for her help. $30,000. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $30,000. Dr. Brennan's voice was hard. My sister is a nurse making $52,000 a year. She's got $85,000 in student loans from nursing school, credit card debt from when our dad got sick and she helped with his medical bills. She's been living paycheck to paycheck for years. $30,000, that's life-changing money. That's enough to make a massive dent in her debt, to finally breathe a little easier, to stop living in constant financial stress. She said yes. I couldn't breathe, literally couldn't get air into my lungs. She helped him switch the samples, Dr. Brennan continued. Your husband's sperm, which couldn't have produced a pregnancy anyway given his diagnosis, was replaced with sperm from a paid donor. The embryologist was in on it too. Your husband had approached him separately with his own payment, $15,000 to the embryologist. Between the two of them, the switch went completely undetected. The doctors had no idea, the other nurses had no idea, you had no idea. And then the pregnancy was successful. Dr. Brennan's voice broke slightly. You got pregnant on the second cycle. Molly saw it in the system, saw the positive results, saw the early ultrasounds showing a healthy, developing baby. And it destroyed her. She pulled out more papers. The guilt ate at her constantly. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, lost 15 pounds in 2 months, started having panic attacks at work. She'd see you at your appointments, happy, excited, glowing, and know that you had no idea your pregnancy was built on fraud. She'd see your husband playing the devoted father-to-be and know he was planning something worse. My confusion was overwhelming. Planning something worse. What do you mean? Dr. Brennan looked at me with something like pity. Why would your husband spend $30,000 bribing a nurse, $15,000 on an embryologist, and another $15,000 to a sperm donor? She paused. Just to give you a baby? The question hung in the air. If he just wanted you to have a child, he could have suggested donor sperm openly. Many couples use donors. It's not shameful. It's not secret. You do it together honestly as partners. So why the fraud? Why the bribery? Why the lies? She pulled out more documents and explained the rest of Grant's plan. The plan that made my blood run absolutely cold. Your husband didn't bribe those people just to give you a baby. He did it to frame you for adultery. I felt like the room was spinning. What? After the baby is born, he was planning to have the embryologist alter the clinic's records. The official paperwork would be changed to show that your second IVF cycle failed. That way, it would appear that you conceived naturally afterward, during the window when you thought you were waiting to try IVF again. Then, he was going to suggest a DNA test, frame it as something sweet and sentimental, proof of fatherhood to hang in the nursery, a celebration of your little family. And when that DNA test came back showing he wasn't the biological father, Dr. Brennan's voice was hard as steel. And when the medical records showed you conceived naturally, he'd have all the evidence he needed that you cheated on him. I couldn't process it, couldn't make it make sense. But why? Why would he? Money. Dr. Brennan pulled out a copy of what looked like a prenuptial agreement. How did you? My sister is thorough. When she finally decided to come forward, she gathered every piece of evidence she could find, including researching your husband's background, your marriage, anything that might explain why he'd do this. She pointed to a clause highlighted in yellow. Your prenup has an infidelity clause. I knew about the clause. My family's lawyer had insisted on it when Grant and I got married. Standard protection for someone with family money marrying someone without it. If either spouse commits adultery, they owe the other spouse $500,000 in penalties. The cheating spouse also forfeits any claim to the other's separate property, meaning my grandmother's trust, the house, all of it would remain completely mine. And the wronged spouse can sue for additional damages, emotional distress, loss of consortium, whatever their lawyer can argue. It was meant to protect me. Grant had signed it without objection. I understand completely, he'd said at the time. You're protecting your family's legacy, I respect that. I'd never do anything to jeopardize what we're building together. He was planning to use that clause against you, Dr. Brennan said quietly. Frame you as the cheater. You'd owe him $500,000 minimum. He'd sue for more emotional damages from being betrayed, raising another man's child, whatever his lawyer could dream up. Could be another few $100,000. You'd forfeit any claim you might have to joint assets. And most importantly, he'd position himself as the victim, the wronged husband, the man whose wife betrayed him in the cruelest possible way. He was counting on you being so devastated, so confused, so desperate to protect your child that you wouldn't fight back effectively. You'd be dealing with the shame, public shame, because he'd make sure everyone knew. Family, friends, your workplace, everyone. You'd be dealing with new motherhood, sleep-deprived, hormonally all over the place, physically recovering from birth. You'd be dealing with the shock of discovering your baby wasn't biologically your husband's. In that state, overwhelmed and destroyed, he figured you'd give him whatever he wanted just to make it stop. Dr. Brennan closed the folder. He almost got away with it. I sat in that office for a long time. Papers spread out in front of me on Dr. Brennan's desk. The truth burning a hole in my chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to exist. Shock came first. Cold, paralyzing shock. The kind where you can't feel your fingers or your face or anything except this spreading numbness. Then disbelief. This couldn't be real, couldn't be happening. Must be some mistake, some misunderstanding, something that would make sense once I talked to Grant and heard his side. Except there was no his side that could explain this. No version of events where bribing nurses and embezzling money and planning to frame your wife for adultery was somehow justified or understandable. I kept reading the documents over and over, looking for some hole in the evidence, some proof that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. But it was all there, time-stamped, documented, confirmed by multiple sources, airtight. Then the pieces started clicking together. All the things that hadn't made sense suddenly made perfect, horrible sense. The late nights at the office, affair with his assistant, meetings with his gambling buddies, trying to figure out how to cover his tracks on the embezzlement, the secret phone calls at 2 a.m., coordinating with the embryologist, talking to the people he owed money to, planning his next move, his obsession with accessing my trust fund, not building our future together, paying his debts, covering his crimes, funding his lifestyle, the way he'd researched clinics so carefully, not finding the best success rates, finding the most corrupt staff, the people he could buy, his emotional reaction to the infertility diagnosis, not grief about not having biological children, panic that his original plan, just marry me, gain access to the money, divorce me for some other reason, had gotten complicated. Recalculation of how to proceed. Our entire courtship looked different now. That chance meeting at the charity gala, he'd researched me beforehand, knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. Probably paid someone for that last-minute invitation specifically to meet me. The way he didn't know who the Wilson family was, total lie, he knew. He'd done his homework. He knew my grandmother's estate down to the dollar. The thoughtful gestures, the remembered details, all manipulation. All calculated to make me trust him, love him, choose him. The way he insisted on paying for dinners even though I could afford it. Establishing himself as the provider, the traditional husband, so I'd feel grateful and obligated. His willingness to sign the prenup without objection. Because he was already planning how to weaponize it against me. The way he cried at our wedding. Those tears I thought came from joy and love, and the overwhelming emotion of committing to someone forever. They were tears of relief. The con was working. The Mark was walking down the aisle willingly. The long game was paying off. He'd successfully infiltrated my life, gained my trust, secured legal marriage status. He was in. And now it was just a matter of time until he could execute the final phase and walk away with everything. And my mother, Vivian, the woman who'd raised me, protected me, taught me everything I knew about being strong and independent and trusting my instincts. She'd seen through him in 5 minutes. One dinner, one conversation, one evening of observation. That man's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something's wrong with him. Please be careful. She'd tried to warn me, begged me to be cautious, fought with me for 2 years trying to make me see what she saw, and I'd pushed her away. Chosen Grant over her. Called her jealous and paranoid and overprotective when she was just trying to save me from exactly what ended up happening. The regret was crushing. The guilt, knowing that if I just listened to her, trusted her, believed her instincts instead of Grant's lies, I could have avoided all of this. The betrayal, the fraud, the manipulation, all of it. But I'd chosen to believe a con artist over my own mother. And now I was sitting in a locked doctor's office, 4 months pregnant with a baby that wasn't biologically my husband's, learning that my entire marriage was a lie designed to destroy me. But then something shifted. Something cold settled into my stomach, something sharp and focused and absolutely calm. Rage, not the hot, explosive kind that makes you scream and throw things. The cold kind, the calculating kind, the kind that plans. Grant thought I was stupid. He'd built this entire scheme on the assumption that I would crumble when his trap sprung. That I'd be so devastated, so overwhelmed, so destroyed that I'd just give up, hand over whatever he wanted, sign whatever papers he put in front of me, disappear quietly while he took everything. He thought I was weak, naive, an easy mark, a rich girl who'd had everything handed to her and wouldn't know how to fight when things got hard. He'd mistaken kindness for weakness, mistaken trust for stupidity, mistaken love for vulnerability. He had no idea who he'd married. No idea that Wilson women don't break, that my grandmother had survived the Depression, raised 4 kids mostly alone while her husband was deployed overseas, built a business from nothing, and created a legacy that lasted 5 generations. That my mother had fought her way through law school as a single parent, built a career in a male-dominated field, and never backed down from anyone or anything. That I'd earned every promotion I'd ever gotten, built my career through actual skill and effort, and didn't need anyone's money or protection or permission to succeed. I looked at Dr. Brennan, really looked at her. This woman who'd risked her medical license by telling me about this, who'd spent weeks helping her sister gather evidence, who was offering me a chance to fight back. Dr. Brennan, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to help me destroy him. She smiled then, actually smiled. I thought you'd never ask. I drove home from that appointment with my face carefully neutral, hands steady on the wheel, breathing even and controlled, just in case. Because Grant had installed security cameras around our house 2 years ago. At the time, he'd said it was for protection, for security, to make sure our home was safe. Now I wondered if it was surveillance, if he watched the footage when I wasn't around, if he was tracking my expressions, my movements, looking for any sign that I suspected something, looking for any crack in my performance that would tell him his cover was blown. So I gave him nothing. He was waiting when I got home, standing in the kitchen making himself a sandwich, wearing the expensive watch I'd bought him for our anniversary, the watch that probably cost less than what he'd paid to bribe that nurse. That thought almost made me laugh, but I didn't. I smiled instead. Hey, baby, how was the appointment? Cheerful, casual, like he actually cared, like he wasn't planning my complete destruction. I walked over and hugged him, actually hugged him, put my arms around the man who'd spent $50,000 trying to frame me for adultery, pressed my pregnant belly, carrying a baby he deliberately ensured wasn't his against him. It was great, I said, pulling back to show him the ultrasound photo Dr. Brennan had printed before everything changed, before she'd shown me the folder that destroyed my world. Baby's perfect, growing right on schedule, everything looks healthy. Grant looked at the ultrasound photo with what seemed like genuine emotion. But I knew better now. Knew how to look past the performance. Could see the calculation behind his eyes. He was probably thinking about his timeline, about how many more months until birth, until he could execute his plan, until he could spring his trap and watch me fall apart. "That's amazing, honey," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'm so sorry I couldn't be there. This client meeting just couldn't be rescheduled." "It's fine," I said. "I know work is crazy right now. I deserve an Oscar for that performance. Seriously. Best actress in a leading role, woman pretending her marriage isn't built on fraud while planning her husband's destruction." I smiled at him over dinner while mentally calculating how much his bail would cost. Asked about his day while picturing him in an orange jumpsuit. Laughed at his joke, something about baby names, it wasn't even funny, while imagining him being led away in handcuffs. I committed to the role like my life depended on it, because in a very real way it did. I even apologized for being paranoid lately, for questioning his late nights and his phone calls and his distance. "I think you were right," I said over dinner, reaching across the table to take his hand. "It's the hormones. Pregnancy is making me anxious and irrational. I'm sorry for being so difficult lately." His whole body relaxed when I said that. The tension I hadn't even fully noticed melted out of his shoulders. His smile became more genuine, or as genuine as anything about him could be. He thought he was still winning. Thought his gaslighting had worked. Thought I'd accepted his version of reality and stopped questioning. Thought his plan was still perfectly on track. That night, Grant slept soundly beside me, snoring slightly, completely at peace. No guilt, no stress, no conscience keeping him awake. Just the deep, restful sleep of a narcissist who thought he'd successfully manipulated everyone around him. I lay awake until 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe, planning his destruction in meticulous detail. The next morning, I called in sick to work. "Hey, it's Daphne. I'm really sorry, but I'm feeling awful today. I think it's morning sickness, but worse. I'm just gonna stay home and rest." My boss was understanding, told me to take care of myself and the baby. Had no idea I was about to spend the day building a legal case against my husband. Grant left for work at his usual time, kissed me goodbye, told me to rest and drink lots of water, reminded me he had a late meeting and wouldn't be home until around 9. "Client dinner," he said. "Probably going to run long. Don't wait up if you're tired." Client dinner, right. More like dinner with his assistant at some restaurant I'd never been to. But I just smiled and said, "Okay, honey, good luck with the meeting." Once Grant's car was out of the driveway, I got ready. Changed into professional clothes, needed to look put together for what I was about to do. Then I drove 2 hours to a different city. Hartford. Far enough from home that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Far enough that the people I was about to hire wouldn't have any connection to Grant's world. I checked my mirrors constantly during the drive, making sure I wasn't followed. Paranoid? Maybe, but I'd earned that paranoia. I found a private investigator named Rosalind Weaver. Her office was in a nondescript building downtown. 3rd floor, door with frosted glass that just said, "R. Weaver Investigations." Ex-police detective. 15 years on the Hartford PD, worked everything from fraud to homicide. Retired early and went private. 58 years old. Salt and pepper hair cut short. Sharp eyes that missed nothing. No-nonsense attitude. The kind of woman who'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed by any of it. Her Yelp reviews were incredible. Rosalind found evidence my ex-husband's lawyer said didn't exist. Worth every penny. Thorough, professional, and absolutely ruthless when she needs to be. If you need the truth, Rosalind Weaver will find it. Perfect. I walked into her office. She looked up from her computer, took one look at me. Pregnant, well-dressed, probably looked like I'd been crying, because I had been. And her expression softened just slightly. "Mrs. Wilson," I'd given her my maiden name when I made the appointment. "Yes, thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Of course, please sit. Can I get you anything?" "Water." "Tea? Water would be great." She poured me a glass from a pitcher on her desk. Professional, efficient, kind without being patronizing, I liked her immediately. "So," she said, settling back in her chair with a notepad, You said on the phone you suspect your husband of fraud. Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out, even if it seems insignificant. So I told her. Everything. The fertility diagnosis. The IVF. Grant insisting on choosing the clinic. The pregnancy. The late nights and the phone calls and the distance. Dr. Brennan and her sister Molly and the folder full of evidence. The bribed nurse and embryologist. The paid donor. The switched samples. Grant's plan to alter records and frame me for adultery. The prenup's infidelity clause and how he planned to use it. The embezzlement. The gambling debts. The affair with his assistant. Caroline Ashford in Boston and the pattern of behavior. All of it, Rosalind listened without interrupting. Took notes in quick, efficient shorthand. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at me over her reading glasses and smiled. Like a shark who just spotted a bleeding swimmer. "Mrs. Wilson," she said, "your husband made a lot of mistakes. Arrogant men always do." She flipped her notepad to a fresh page. "Give me 2 weeks." 2 weeks for what? To find everything. Every secret bank account, every debt, every lie he's ever told. 2 weeks and I'll have enough evidence to bury him. How much will this cost? My retainer is $5,000. After that, it's $200 an hour plus expenses. Based on what you've told me, I'd estimate total cost around $15,000 to $20,000 for a complete investigation. I didn't even hesitate. Done. Where do I sign? She smiled again, approving. I like you, Mrs. Wilson, you've got spine. Please call me Daphne. Daphne, then, let's destroy your husband. Rosalind had results in 10 days. 10 days. She called me on my cell phone. I'd given her that number specifically, not my home phone, and asked me to come back to Hartford. I've got what you need, and then some. I told Grant I had a doctor's appointment. He barely looked up from his phone. Okay, text me if there's any news about the baby. Will do. I drove to Hartford, walked into Rosalind's office. She had 3 thick folders waiting for me. The gambling debts were worse than you thought, she said, opening the first folder. Total owed approximately $180,000. She showed me records, printouts, screenshots, online poker sites, $67,000 across 3 different platforms. He'd been playing under multiple usernames, probably trying to hide the extent of it. Sports betting, $41,000 to various online bookies, mostly on football and basketball, losing consistently. Casino debts, $38,000 to 2 different casinos in Connecticut. He'd been going multiple times a month, sometimes staying overnight, charging it all to credit cards that were maxed out. Private poker games, $34,000 to various individuals who ran underground games. These were the dangerous ones, the ones who don't send collection letters. These last guys. Rosalind tapped the page. They're not patient, and they don't go through legal channels when they want their money. Your husband has been getting increasingly desperate messages from them. She showed me printed text messages she'd somehow obtained. Grant, you're 2 months late. This needs to be handled now. You have until the end of the month or we're moving to alternative collection methods. Don't make us come find you. The embezzlement is even more extensive than the doctor told you, Rosalind said, opening the second folder. Total missing from client accounts, $53,000. She'd tracked every transaction, small amounts at first, $800 here, $1,200 there, taken from accounts of clients who didn't check their statements carefully. Elderly clients mostly. People who trusted Grant to manage everything and didn't scrutinize the details. He'd move money from their investment accounts to a personal account he'd set up under a shell company. Made it look like legitimate investment transactions. Then he'd transfer from that account to his personal checking. Brilliant in its way, and absolutely illegal. His firm has no idea yet, Rosalind said. The amounts are small enough individually that they haven't triggered any alerts, but it's all there in the records. Clear as day once you know to look. She documented everything. Dates, amounts, account numbers, the whole trail. The affair, Rosalind said, opening the third folder with something like disgust on her face. 8 months. His assistant, Jessica Chambers, 26 years old, started at his firm 9 months ago. Photos, dozens of them, Grant and Jessica at restaurants, holding hands, kissing, walking into hotels. The Marriott downtown. The Hilton by the airport. A bed-and breakfast in the Berkshires. Timestamps and locations on every photo. Credit card receipts showing his purchases, hotel rooms, dinners, jewelry, a necklace he definitely never gave to me. Text messages Rosalind had somehow obtained. Can't wait to see you tonight. Room 412. You looked so beautiful yesterday. I can't stop thinking about you. Just a few more months and we can be together for real. Just a few more months and we can be together for real. He'd sent that 6 weeks ago. A few more months. Right around when the baby would be born. When he could execute his plan. Frame me for adultery, take my money, divorce me, and ride off into the sunset with his 26-year-old assistant. His assistant. Of course it was his assistant. I was almost insulted by the cliché of it all. Like, if you're gonna blow up your marriage and risk federal fraud charges, at least be creative about it. But no. Chapter 1 of the Cheating Husband Handbook. Probably had a bookmark and highlighting and notes in the margins. I also tracked down Caroline Ashford in Boston, Rosalind said. She was very willing to talk once I explained what he was doing to you. Said she'd always felt guilty for not pressing charges when she had the chance. Rosalind showed me her notes from the interview. Caroline and Grant had dated 5 years ago, met at a financial planning conference. He'd seemed charming, successful, genuinely interested in her. They'd dated for 8 months. He'd talked about marriage, moving in together, building a future. Then he'd suggested they open a joint checking account. For shared expenses, easier to manage household bills together. She'd agreed. Within 3 months, $18,000 was missing from that account. Small transactions at first, then larger ones. When she questioned him, he had explanations. But they didn't quite add up. The numbers didn't match. The stories changed slightly each time. She hired an accountant to review the statements. Discovered Grant had been systematically draining the account. Confronted him. He'd cried, apologized, said he had a problem, gambling addiction. He'd get help. She ended the relationship immediately, but she didn't press charges. Didn't report him to his employer. Too embarrassed. Felt stupid for falling for it. Just wanted to move on. She's prepared to provide a formal statement now, Rosalind said. She'll testify if necessary. Establish a pattern of behavior. Show this isn't a one-time thing or a misunderstanding. This is who Grant Mercer is, what he does, how he operates. She handed me Caroline's written and notarized statement, detailed, damning, corroborated with bank records she'd kept all these years. Rosalind leaned back in her chair. Daphne, your husband isn't just trying to steal your inheritance. He's not just a cheater having an affair with his assistant. He's not just a guy who made some bad choices. He's a predator, a con artist, a career criminal who specifically targets wealthy women for financial fraud. He did it to Caroline. He's doing it to you. If he gets away with it this time, he'll do it to someone else. This is his business model. How do men like this exist? I asked quietly. Rosalind's face was hard. Narcissism, sociopathy, lack of empathy. Call it whatever you want. Bottom line is he doesn't see people as people. He sees them as resources to exploit, marks to con. You were never a wife to him, you were a target. So what do I do now? I asked. Now, Rosalind smiled. Now we build an airtight case, criminal and civil. We get you the best lawyers in the state. We coordinate with prosecutors, and we destroy him so completely he never recovers. I want him in prison, I said. He will be fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement. He's looking at years, minimum. I want him to lose everything. He will, every penny. By the time we're done, he'll have legal fees, restitution, fines, and nothing left. I want everyone to know what he is. They will. This will be public, court records, news coverage, his name attached to fraud and embezzlement forever. No woman will trust him again. No employer will hire him. I took a deep breath. For the first time since that doctor's office, I felt like I could actually breathe. Let's do it. One more thing, Rosalind said. For this to work, he can't know you're onto him. Not until we're ready. Can you keep playing the role? I thought about Grant sleeping soundly while I lay awake. Thought about him texting his assistant while sitting next to me on the couch. Thought about him planning my destruction while I cooked his dinner. "Oh, I can play the role," I said. "I'm about to give the performance of my lifetime." 3 days after meeting with Rosalind, I met with Molly Brennan in secret. Coffee shop an hour from our town. Far enough that no one would recognize either of us. Small place, locally owned. Only a few customers at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I got there first, ordered a decaf latte, sat in the back corner where we'd have privacy. Molly arrived 10 minutes later. I recognized her from the photo her sister had shown me, but in person she looked haunted, thin, too thin, like she'd lost 20 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. Pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, hands that wouldn't stop moving, fidgeting with her coffee cup, her napkin, her phone. She sat down across from me and immediately started crying. "I'm so sorry," she said, first words out of her mouth. "I'm so sorry. I knew it was wrong. I knew from the beginning it was wrong, but the money and he was so convincing and I thought maybe..." I reached across the table and took her hand, stopped her mid-sentence. "Molly, listen to me. Just one thing." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Are you willing to testify, officially on the record under oath? Are you willing to tell prosecutors and judges and possibly a jury exactly what Grant did and what you did and everything that happened?" She didn't hesitate, not even for a second. "Yes, absolutely yes. I should have come forward the day after it happened. I should have reported it immediately. I was just so scared of losing my license and my job and everything I've worked for." She was crying harder now. "But I can't live with this anymore. I can't sleep, can't eat. I look at pregnant women at the clinic and think about what I did to you. I need to make this right, whatever it takes." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd helped my husband try to destroy me, who'd taken $30,000 to commit fraud, who was, by any legal definition, an accomplice. But she was also a victim in her own way. Grant had manipulated her just like he'd manipulated me and Caroline before me. He'd found her weakness, financial desperation, and exploited it. He'd lied to her about his motives, made it seem noble instead of evil. He'd positioned himself as the good guy trying to protect his wife from genetic disease when the truth was so much darker. She'd made a terrible choice, but he was the architect of it all. "Molly, listen to me. You're not the villain in this story. Grant is." "But I helped him." "Because he manipulated you. That's what con artists do. They find people's vulnerabilities and exploit them. You needed money. He offered it. He lied about why. You're not the first person to fall for it, and you won't be the last." "But I should have known." How could you have known? He's been perfecting this act for years. He fooled me and I'm married to him. He fooled Caroline before me. He's good at this. That's not your fault." She was quiet. "Don't be scared anymore," I said firmly. "You're doing the right thing now. You're stopping him. You're making sure he can't do this to anyone else. What's going to happen to me? Honestly, I don't know. You'll probably lose your license, at least temporarily. You might face charges, but..." I squeezed her hand. "My lawyer says if you cooperate fully, testify willingly, and show remorse, which you clearly do, prosecutors usually offer reduced charges or immunity in exchange for testimony against the main perpetrator. Grant is the main target here. You're a witness who can help build the case against him. And I'll make sure my lawyers advocate for you. I'll make sure everyone knows you came forward voluntarily, that you've been living with this guilt, that you're genuinely sorry. I can't promise you won't face consequences, but I can promise I'll do everything I can to make sure those consequences are fair." She cried even harder at that. "Why are you being nice to me? I helped ruin your life. You helped start to ruin my life. But I'm going to finish it by sending Grant to prison. Big difference." That actually made her laugh through the tears. We talked for another hour. She gave me details about the scheme that hadn't been in her sister's notes. Told me about meetings with Grant. His demeanor. The way he'd coached her on what to say if anyone questioned the procedures. Gave me the embryologist's full name and contact information. Told me everything she could remember. By the time we left that coffee shop, I had everything I needed from her. And she looked lighter somehow. Like confessing had lifted a weight she'd been carrying for months. The embryologist, once he learned Molly was cooperating and had kept records, developed a sudden and convenient conscience. Funny how that works. He gave his own statement to Rosalind, terrified of losing his medical license and going to prison. He'd say whatever we needed to put Grant away. The hardest call I made was to my mother. 2 years of near silence. 2 years of choosing Grant over her. I defended him when she questioned his motives. Stopped inviting her to holidays. Called her jealous, paranoid, unable to accept that I was happy. And she'd been right about everything. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Daphne!" Her voice was cautious, hopeful, like she'd been waiting for this call for 2 years but didn't want to jinx it. "Mom!" My voice cracked on the word. "You were right about everything, about him." Silence. I braced for the "I told you so" she'd absolutely earned, for the anger, the resentment, the hurt I'd caused. Instead, she said, "What do you need, sweetheart?" She didn't gloat, didn't remind me of every warning I'd ignored, didn't point out that she'd tried to tell me for years. She just asked how she could help. That broke me more than anything else had. I started sobbing right there on the phone. Big, ugly, shoulder-shaking sobs. All the fear and betrayal and rage I'd been holding in for weeks just poured out. My mom waited. Didn't rush me, just stayed on the line. When I finally caught my breath, she said, "I'm coming over. Pack a bag. You're staying with me until we figure this out." My mother is a retired attorney. Specialized in estate law for 30 years before she stepped back. Within 48 hours, she'd connected me with the best divorce lawyer in Connecticut, a criminal prosecutor who specialized in fraud cases, a family law specialist who dealt with prenup enforcement. My divorce lawyer was a woman named Sandra Kowalski. 5'2", silver hair, reading glasses perpetually perched on her nose. She looked like someone's sweet grandmother who bakes cookies and knits scarves. She was a shark in a cardigan. Sandra reviewed everything. The clinic documents, Molly's statement, Rosalind's findings, the affair evidence, the embezzlement records. When she finished, she looked up at me over those reading glasses and smiled. "Your husband is facing fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement charges. That's the criminal side." She tapped the prenup. "The infidelity clause works in your favor now because he's the one who's been cheating. He owes you $500,000. She pulled out another document. "And his little scheme to falsify medical records after the birth, that's a felony he was planning to commit. We have evidence of intent." She leaned back. "Mrs. Wilson, when we're done with him, he won't have enough money left to buy a sandwich." Sandra coordinated with the prosecutor. Molly gave a formal, sworn statement to police. The embryologist cooperated in exchange for reduced charges. Grant's firm was quietly alerted about the missing funds. They began their own investigation and immediately froze his access to all client accounts. Derek Sykes, the sperm donor, agreed to testify about the circumstances of his payment. A judge reviewed the evidence, found probable cause, issued an arrest warrant for fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, attempted fraud, the plan to falsify records. My lawyer called it a formality at this point. I called it the best piece of paper I'd ever seen in my life. 8.5 by 11 inches of pure karma. 6 weeks after that ultrasound appointment, I had an idea, a glorious idea. I suggested to Grant that we throw a celebration. A baby moon party at my grandmother's estate. Both families, close friends. An afternoon garden gathering to celebrate the baby coming soon. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. More witnesses to his devoted husband performance. More people who would feel sorry for him later when his wife was exposed as a cheater. More fuel for the sympathy he was planning to milk. "That's a wonderful idea," he said, kissing my forehead in that gentle way that used to make me feel safe. "Let me help plan everything." No, I patted his chest. "You've been working so hard lately, all those late nights at the office. Let me handle the party. You just show up and enjoy it." He had no idea that my version of handling everything included police officers waiting in the guest house, my lawyer stationed near the bar, Derek Sykes, ready to testify, every piece of evidence organized in folders his own parents, about to learn exactly who their son really was. The party was scheduled for Saturday. Grant spent that morning in the bathroom practicing expressions in the mirror, adjusting his tie, rehearsing his excited father's smile. I watched him through the crack in the door. This man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years. This man I'd trusted with my future, my family, my heart. He thought he was walking into his crowning achievement. He had no idea he was walking into his own funeral. The Wilson family estate in late spring. My grandmother's gardens in full bloom. 50 years of careful cultivation bursting with color. White tents on the back lawn. Champagne chilling in silver buckets. Flowers arranged on every table. A string quartet playing softly near the rose bushes. 50 guests milling about in their Sunday best. Family, friends, colleagues. Grant's parents had driven up from Maryland. So proud of their successful son and his beautiful pregnant wife. My grandmother would have loved this party. She also would have seen through Grant in about 30 seconds flat. But that's grandmother wisdom for you. The older generation has a radar for phonies that the rest of us have to develop the hard way. Grant was in his absolute element, working the crowd like a politician at a fundraiser. Handshakes, backslaps, that charming laugh he'd perfected over years of practice. His hand kept finding my belly for photos. Every time someone pointed a camera, there he was, the devoted father-to-be, gazing at me with what looked like adoration. He was so good at pretending to be human. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The feeling lasted approximately 3 seconds before I remembered the $50,000 he'd spent trying to destroy my life. Sympathy evaporated pretty quickly after that. Grant's mother kept dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. I always knew he'd make a wonderful father, she told anyone who would listen. Such a good boy, such a caring husband. His father walked around shaking hands, chest puffed out, proud of the family Grant was supposedly building. The legacy continuing. The Mercer name carried forward. My own mother stood near the dessert table, watching Grant with the patient expression of a cat observing a mouse that doesn't know it's trapped. She caught my eye across the lawn and raised her champagne glass slightly. Almost time. Around 3 o'clock, Grant did exactly what I knew he would do. He'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting to celebrate fatherhood with a DNA test. Frame the results in the nursery. Proof of their bond. So romantic, so meaningful, so completely staged. At the party, he brought it up again loudly, making sure plenty of people could hear. You know what we should do, honey? He pulled me close, arm around my waist, playing to the crowd. I've been thinking, let's get one of those DNA test kits. We can frame the results for the nursery. Proof that daddy and baby are connected forever. He looked around. Wouldn't that be special? Several guests made awe sounds. His mother dabbed her eyes again. Someone said, "How sweet." Someone else mentioned they wish their husband was that thoughtful. I pretended to hesitate. Oh, I don't know, that seems like a lot of trouble. Come on, it'll be amazing. We could even open the results right here, right now, make it part of the celebration. He looked around. What do you think, everyone? Encouraging murmurs from the crowd. How sweet. What a thoughtful husband. I looked around, playing the shy wife. Well, if everyone thinks it's a good idea. Grant was practically glowing. This was his moment. The trap he'd spent over a year building was about to snap shut. He could already taste my money, my humiliation, my destruction. He just didn't realize whose neck was in the trap. Instead of pulling out a DNA kit, I walked toward the small platform we'd set up near the fountain, the one meant for toasts and speeches. I picked up the microphone. Grant smiled up at me from the crowd, champagne in hand. He was already rehearsing his shocked, devastated face, practicing the tears he'd cry when the truth came out about his cheating wife. Thank you all for coming today, I said, my voice carrying across the lawn. This party is supposed to be about celebration, about family, about truth. I found Grant's eyes in the crowd. My husband said he wanted to reveal something special today, so I'm going to help him do exactly that. His smile flickered just for a second, the first crack in his performance. I reached under the podium and pulled out a folder. 3 months ago, I learned something about my husband that changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I want to share it with all of you today because Grant is right. This should be about truth. Grant's smile was frozen now. His champagne glass had stopped halfway to his lips. Grant and I struggled with fertility. His diagnosis meant natural conception was impossible for us. So we did IVF, at a clinic he chose. I held up the first document. These are the records from that clinic, the original records, before anyone had a chance to alter them. I let that word hang in the air. Original. Grant's face went pale. These records show that my husband bribed 2 clinic employees to switch his sperm sample with donor sperm. He paid $30,000 to a nurse. He paid the embryologist. And he paid $15,000 to a young man named Derek Sykes. I gestured toward the edge of the crowd. Derek stepped forward, a 28-year-old grad student who thought he was helping an infertile couple, not participating in fraud. To provide the sperm that was used to conceive my child without my knowledge, without my consent. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Grant's mother grabbed his father's arm. Someone dropped a champagne glass and it shattered on the patio stones. My husband's plan was simple, I continued. Wait until our child was born. Demand a DNA test. And when the results proved he wasn't the biological father, which he already knew would happen, he would accuse me of having an affair. I held up more documents. Our prenup has an infidelity clause. If I had supposedly cheated, I would owe him $500,000. He could sue for additional damages. He could destroy my reputation. He could take everything my grandmother left me and walk away. Grant found his voice. It came out strangled, desperate. Daphne, honey, this is insane. You're confused. It's the pregnancy, the hormones. You're not thinking clearly. I'm not finished. My voice was ice. The crowd went silent. In addition to bribing the fertility clinic, my husband embezzled approximately $50,000 from his clients at his firm to fund this scheme. I looked at a man standing near the bar. Grant's boss, who'd been quietly invited. His firm is now aware and investigating. Grant's boss set down his drink. His face said everything. My husband also has $180,000 in gambling debts. Money he owes to people who don't take late payments kindly. And for the past 8 months, I pulled out the photographs. Nothing explicit, just romantic enough to leave no doubt. He's been having an affair with his assistant. Grant's mother made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. I displayed the photos, restaurant dinners, hotel entrances, the kind of evidence that removes all possibility of denial. This wasn't even his first attempt, I added. 5 years ago in Boston, he targeted another woman with family money. That relationship ended when she discovered financial irregularities. She's provided a statement to investigators and is prepared to testify. Grant's champagne glass slipped from his fingers. It hit the stone patio and exploded. Champagne spraying across his expensive shoes. Those are lies, he stammered. She's making this up. She's mentally unstable. The pregnancy has affected her mind. Grant. His own mother's voice cut through the noise. Quiet but sharp enough to draw blood. Is any of this true? He turned to face her, opened his mouth to deny everything. Nothing came out. Molly Brennan stepped forward from where she'd been standing near the guest house, pale but determined. I'm the nurse he bribed, she said. I have documentation of everything. I've already given my statement to police. Derek Sykes spoke up next. He paid me $15,000 and told me it was a private arrangement. I had no idea I was part of a fraud until Mrs. Wilson's investigator contacted me last month. Grant looked around wildly at the faces of people who'd been laughing with him 10 minutes ago. His colleagues, his family, the society friends he'd worked so hard to impress. Everyone was staring at him like he was something rotting they just discovered on their shoe. Then 2 police officers stepped out from the guest house, walking calmly across the lawn. Grant Mercer. The first officer's voice was professionally neutral. You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. They handcuffed him right there in front of everyone. His mother was sobbing now. His father refused to look at him, staring at the ground like he wished it would open up and swallow him. As they walked him toward the police car, Grant tried one last time, one final manipulation. Daphne, please, his voice cracked. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but I love you. I've always loved you. Don't do this. Think about our baby. Think about our family. I looked at him, really looked at the man I'd shared my life with for 3 years. The man who'd stood at an altar and promised to love and protect me while calculating how much he could steal. You're absolutely right, Grant, I said. I am thinking about our family. I paused. And I just protected them from you. They put him in the back of the police car. I watched it drive away down the long gravel path. Past the gardens my grandmother had planted half a century ago, through the iron gates of the property Grant had wanted so desperately to own. 50 guests stood in absolute silence. Then my mother walked up and put her arm around my shoulders. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "Your grandmother would be too." And for the first time in months, I took a full breath. Grant was denied bail. Flight risk, the judge said. Between his gambling debts and the people he owed money to, there was too much chance he'd disappear. Those gambling creditors got very interested very quickly once the arrest made the news. They'd been patient while Grant had a wealthy wife. That patience evaporated the moment they realized the money train had derailed. His affair partner, the assistant he'd been sneaking around with for 8 months, resigned from his firm the morning after the party. Didn't even clean out her desk. Just sent an email and vanished. She didn't wait for the handcuffs to click shut before she ran. I've seen rats leave sinking ships with more loyalty. At least rats have the decency to look back once. Grant's firm completed their internal investigation within 2 weeks. $53,000 confirmed missing. They filed their own criminal charges. Caroline Ashford from Boston came forward publicly once she heard about the arrest. She'd spent 5 years feeling stupid for falling for his act, too embarrassed to pursue justice. She wasn't embarrassed anymore. Her statement added another layer to the case prosecutors were building. The divorce was finalized in record time. Grant's lawyer tried to negotiate, but there was nothing to negotiate with. The prenup's infidelity clause, the one Grant had been planning to weaponize against me, worked in my favor. Now, he was the one who'd been unfaithful for 8 months. He owed me, not the other way around. Not that he had anything to give. Every asset he claimed to own was either borrowed, stolen, or imaginary. The criminal case moved quickly. Molly Brennan testified. The embryologist cooperated fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. Derek Sykes provided his statement. The paper trail Grant thought he'd hidden wasn't hidden at all. Fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement. Each charge stuck. Each charge carried years. His parents stopped coming to court after the first week. His father released a statement saying Grant had made choices that no parent can defend. His mother checked into a facility for exhaustion, which is what wealthy people call it when they can't face reality. Grant Mercer, who had walked into my life 4 years ago with such careful charm, would spend the next several years in prison. When he eventually got out, he'd have nothing. No money, no career, no family willing to acknowledge him, no future targets who wouldn't find his criminal record with a simple search of his name. The trap he'd built so patiently and so carefully had snapped shut on his own neck. My baby was born 4 months after the party. Healthy, perfect, absolutely innocent in everything that had happened. Some people asked if I was going to contact Derek Sykes, include him somehow. I thought about it. But Derek was a 28-year-old grad student who'd made a dumb decision for money he desperately needed. He wasn't ready to be a father. He didn't want to be, and I didn't need him to be. My child would have me, would have my mother finally back in my life where she belonged, would have the entire Wilson family, the legacy my grandmother built over decades of love and work. That was more than enough. That was everything. I learned something through all of this. Family isn't about DNA. It's not about blood tests or biology or genetic matches on a chart. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. My mother chose me when I didn't deserve it. I chose my baby when the circumstances were complicated. That's what family actually means. My mother and I had lunch every week now, making up for 2 lost years, one conversation at a time. She never said, "I told you so." Not once. Finally, I asked her why. She set down her coffee cup and smiled. "Because watching you take down that man was more satisfying than any 4 words could ever be." I laughed. First real laugh in what felt like forever. 3 weeks after the party, early morning, I sat in my grandmother's kitchen. My kitchen now, in the house Grant had coveted so desperately. Sunlight poured through windows that had watched 4 generations of Wilson women live their lives. The same windows my grandmother had looked through while drinking her morning tea 50 years ago. I made myself a cup of chamomile, her recipe, her favorite brand. Some traditions are worth keeping. My phone buzzed on the counter. Text from my mother. Lunch tomorrow. I smiled and typed back always. Outside, the gardens were in full bloom. The roses my grandmother planted when she was a young bride. The hydrangeas she added when my mother was born. The lavender border I'd helped her install when I was 10 years old. My small hands patting dirt around each seedling while she told me stories about our family. I put my hand on my belly, felt the baby move. Grant Mercer had tried to take everything from me. My money, my reputation, my future, my peace. All he actually did was show me exactly how strong I'd always been. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for karma to arrive. I was lucky. I got to deliver mine in person with documentation in front of 50 witnesses. My grandmother used to say that Wilson women don't break. We bend. We adapt. We survive. And when someone tries to burn us down, we rise from the ashes and build something better. Grant thought he married an easy target. He married a Wilson. And now he had plenty of time in a prison cell to think about that mistake. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next.